Welcome everyone, it's Sharon Blain here. I'm having a hairy chat with Johnny Othona. Wow, what an amazing experience it's been. I got to share some wonderful time with Johnny, not only in the interview, but also over dinner. And also had the opportunity to come in and do a little bit of work with his staff as well. He is the man, and I just love the philosophy behind their education of Allilon. Allilon Education is becoming so unique worldwide, and I wanted to know why. What was that point of difference? What is making them so unique, and why is everyone talking so much about the brand and the education style that they offer? So grab a coffee. I'm about to begin this hairy chat with Johnny, and I'm sure you will find by the time you get to it, the end of this conversation, that you have found this amazing man as incredible as I have. So I'm just welcoming Johnny Othona from Allilon Education, and it's really an amazing pleasure because I just wrote a little note here, and the reason why I wanted to talk to you today was, you know, the travels that I do, obviously I'm connecting with hairdressers around the world, and you usually end up having a drink after a session, one of your classes, and this name has just been cropping up absolutely everywhere. I don't know if you realize how significant, or what a significance you're making out there in the industry. And so I'm here in London, and I thought, oh my God, what a great opportunity to just touch base and really just hear what you're doing, because I follow you on Instagram. I'm looking at this teaching, and it seems like you're very, theory based. It seems like you've got your own terminology, the way you're doing things, the angles, the projections, and all of this seems to be like a massive sort of like educational theory process on top of the cutting. And I can see it's unique.
Thank you.
I can see it is unique because having been I had cut, and I've always professed to be a reasonable cutter, having done many a sassoon course, I can see that it's different.
Yeah.
It's definitely different. So what I wanted to know was, what is it? What is it all about? So
okay, let me tell you the journey. So my name is Johnny Othona. I'm lucky enough to have two companies. One is Enna Salon. Enna Salon is a consumer brand, and Allilon Education is an education brand. It's an industry-driven brand. And I'm very lucky to have these two companies with my best friend and also my business partner, Pedro Anchenko. He's actually in Vietnam right now, so he can't be here for this interview, but he's my best friend, and he's somebody who we have a very genuine, solid journey together.
So how far back do you guys go?
So me and Ped, we met when we were 16.
Oh gosh.
And ironically, when we first met, we didn't actually like each other. Which is quite funny.
So a good reason to be a business partner.
Yeah, no, when we first met, I mean, I used to be quite, I used to be very, very, maybe, what's the right word? Loud, I suppose it's maybe a negative, can be a negative word, but I used to be quite loud, and I think it's because I was very insecure about myself. And my business partner, Pedro, he used to be very, very quiet, the complete power opposite. And I used to think he was really arrogant because he never used to speak to anybody, and he used to think I was really arrogant because I used to walk in and be really loud and kind of take over the room. And I think what's made us so compact is the fact that I've kind of become more like him and he's become more like me over the years. It's probably like a really dysfunctional marriage. it's crazy. So we've found this kind of mutual respect for each other, and he's also Greek Cypriot. I'm Greek Cypriot. He's Greek Cypriot, but he's also got some Ukraine in him. His granddad was from Ukraine. So we basically met when we were 16. I'm 40 now, so we've known each other for a long time. And he's somebody that I know that if I'm ever in a situation where things are difficult, I know that he'd be one person. There's three. I think in everyone's journey, there's at least 2 or 3 people who.
Well, they say that, don't they? If you can count on your hand 3 people that you would pick up the phone to when you have a problem, you're actually you're blessed.
Lucky.
Yes.
So Pedro would be one of those 3 people, and I like to think that I would be one of his 3 people, should we say? So we've known each other since we were 16, and we had this vision about creating a company which gave people the opportunity to really feel like they're part of something bigger than just themselves. And we've created 2 different companies. One of them is Enna Salon, which is a consumer brand. It's basically hair care, beauty, things like that. It's very consumer driven. The images are very consumer driven, the branding, the feeling, the philosophy. Enna is modern Greek for the word one. When we say one, we don't mean we are number one. What we mean is like one goal, one team, one dream, one voice. If I'm speaking, it's like Ped's speaking. If Ped's speaking, it's like Dami's speaking. If we all have one goal.
Yes.
So that's the kind of brand structure of the name. It's about uniting people. Very kind of humane. That's our main kind of focus. Whereas Allilon is ancient Greek for the words one to another, the principles of sharing.
Oh, okay.
So the idea is you have Allilon before you come into Enna. So you have the education hand, which then leads into Enna. So think of Allilon as the support mechanism for Enna, and think of Enna as the proof that the system works.
Yes, yes.
So we try to create 2 very different brands. So if you look at Allilon, for example, it's a lot more, you could argue it's a lot more expressive. You could argue that it's a lot more challenging to the eye sometimes. It's not consumer driven. There's no restriction for us with Allilon. And what I love about having our own company is we're able to reinvent ourselves all the time. A lot of companies, they kind of create this brand and this structure, and then they make it work as a business, and then they stick to it and they don't change. We literally have, in the past 6 months, ripped our primary shape course to pieces and rebuilt it again and re-looked at it again, because what we're learning is that we're constantly learning. So we're constantly debating about whether what we're teaching, is it actually as precise as it could be? Do we really understand it as pure as we can? We've had an amazing journey. We've worked with some incredible people. We've been blessed in that thought process, but at the same time we've also inherited a lot of things that maybe actually now we've understood weren't actually correct. So what's interesting is that, and this is the bit that blows my mind sometimes, when people say, oh well, you know, hair cutting is done, you know, like it's done, you know, there's no you can't reinvent it, it's done. And it's like, well, what we were taught, when you actually investigate it properly, you actually realize there's holes in the information. And one of the biggest things I find traveling the world, and you both might find it as well, because that's what both of you do. One of the things I find is there's a one consistency that every single hairdresser wants, every hairdresser, and it's just to have the confidence to understand what they're doing.
Yes.
To be able to, no matter who comes in and sits down, they understand that X, Y, and Z equals this.
Exactly.
There's no grey.
Right.
So whether it's dressing hair, colouring hair, cutting hair, there is a logical approach to it. And what we've tried to do is take everything we've inherited, really look at it. I was personally, if I'm talking from a personal level, I was a really frustrated learner, because I was that kind of kid who was like, kind of, what are you doing now? What's the difference between that and that?
Yes.
You know, how does that work?
So changing your finger levels and things like that.
Whatever it would be.
Yes.
I was always that kid who really wanted to understand.
You probably
it.
were driving everybody crazy, because they probably couldn't answer the 100%. Question that you were asking.
I think my biggest frustration was people used to say things like, you've probably had this in your journey as well. I know you probably have as well, because I've spoken to that before. Like, so why is that happening? It just does. Or, with experience, you'll understand. Or if you watch me, you'll get it. And
exactly.
I was just like, what the? And so for me, I was lost. I was constantly lost. And I was, like I said, I was so fortunate to work with some incredible people. And at that period of time of my journey, hair cutting was evolving, and what they thought was right was evolving, and it was this period where it was like an explosion of investigation, and that was kind of what I was looking at, kind of growing. And what I realized was, even though I worked in an amazing salon with some really great people, I would ask, I don't know, Doris a question, and she'd give me her version of the answer. I'd ask Peter a question, he'd give me his version. I'd ask Sarah, she'd give. So I was always lost, because who was right? Sarah, Peter, or Paul, or Doris? You know, who's right? So what we wanted to try to do was to try and create a standardized language and a standardized thought process that, if we shared it with people and people embraced it, whether you're a hairdresser in Australia or a hairdresser in Japan.
Yeah.
If you had this basic core philosophy, you'd be able to communicate with one language.
Yes.
For example, if you're a doctor in Australia and I'm a doctor in Russia, the heart is the heart. It might be worded with a different language, but the principle of what
It's
it does,
still what it
the
is.
function of it, if there's a problem with it, what could these 5 things be that's gone wrong with it? And what is the symptoms for these 5 things? And
Yes.
what's the solutions for these
That's
5
right.
things? So whether you're in, regardless of where you are on the planet, there's a structure to it.
Yeah.
And it's always the same.
Yeah.
And cutting and our language, what we're trying to do, or not, what we think we've accomplished is we've created a system that helps people understand when, why, and how.
So it's pretty much a guaranteed formula.
I mean,
You know, I mean, obviously you're going to have to take into consideration you've got some hair growths and you're always going to have to consider the anomaly.
Yeah.
But reality is, if you follow these rules,
yeah.
you're pretty close to perfecting
100%.
what you're doing.
You've just got the way we try to communicate to people is like, if we're trained the same way, and you're in a completely different room to me, and I use language to describe what I'm doing, you're not watching me. You're
No.
simply listening to words. You would be able to reproduce similar, might not be exact to the millimeter, but a similar idea on a similar shape as I'm doing in this room.
Have you tested that?
100%. Yeah.
And so you're talking and they're following
So we could be
behind closed
Yeah,
doors.
I could be, for example, here, and Ped could be next door, and I would say, well, I'm starting in the back. I'm separating the hair from the crown, taking a vertical section to behind the ear. So I'm separating the hair into 2 zones: the front zone and the back zone. I'm then starting in the centre back, taking a vertical section from the crown to the centre nape. I'm
I
separating
can
the hair.
I can
So
do that
you can
already.
picture it in your mind.
I can see
because I'm
that.
using the language
Yes.
rather than you just do this. And I'm being specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pulling the hair out from the base. My cutting line is 3 inches at the bottom, and it's increasing in length towards the crown. The crown needs to be 5 inches long. You know, and you're able to really visualize what I'm saying.
Yes. Yes.
And that is part of the process, because if your mind understands, your hands understand. If your mind doesn't get what you're doing, you're just be doing robot. You just, you know, when I was training, my biggest frustration was I was trained styles. So I had a menu. So when I
Yes.
qualified, if someone come and sat on my chair, I'd try and fit the haircut onto them.
Absolutely.
And it was like, you obviously I learned over time that's just, you can't have haircut B on this person because of X, Y, and Z, the fixed and variable analysis. But I didn't understand what fixed and variable analysis was. So I would just literally plant something on someone's head, forgetting about suitability, growth patterns, head shape, densities, all that.
Because that was part of the menu.
Yeah, and haircut 7. I'd cut a bob, for example.
Yes.
And it's really interesting, because if you teach people how to cut hair, then they can achieve any look.
That's right.
But if you teach people looks, then they're
Yes.
limited.
That's exactly.
And that's how we think.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give people the understanding of how to manipulate length and weight. And once they understand that, then it's about the decision-making process.
Yes.
So our hair philosophy is quite a simple one. It's getting people to understand when, why, and how. And what we mean by that is this. If they understand when to do something, but also when not to do it. If they're going to do it, okay, why do they do it? Why should they do it? Why should they not do it?
Yeah.
And if they're going to decide when and why, then it's how. How should they do it? How should they not do it? And it works the same way with tools. So for example, when I was training on my journey, we were banned from using certain tools. And what's interesting about that is not that it's wrong, because I've had an amazing conversation with a young man called Christopher Brooker. And he's one of the originals of originals.
Oh, and actually I remember him doing the Friday afternoon at Sassoon's.
Yeah, he's the guy. The
Come
guy.
and do the demos.
You're listening to a guy who's not making things up. He was there.
Yes.
And it was really interesting, because when he was talking to me about that journey, because the company was growing so quickly, so rapidly, they were just inheriting hairdressers with lots of different ability levels. So in order to restrict them, they took away all their tools and gave them only 2 tools to work with. And that way they tried to standardize things. So it was a standardization process. That's why they were banned from using certain tools.
Yes.
And then as it evolved, then it became about, okay, well, how do the results, the final results, how does the tools impact that? So what we try to embrace is, it's not the tool that's the problem, it's the person using the tool, because the scissors can be just as dangerous as more dangerous than a brush, for example. So if we can get people to understand when to do something, when not to, how not to, and why they should or why they shouldn't, either use that tool or choose that cutting length or think about that suitability or whatever it is we're talking about. I mean, we could go on for ages about talking about hair, but if we can get them to understand the choices, then the outcomes are always positive. The difference is, and probably the reason why you're so amazing at what you do, is your experience level, your choices are much more accurate than other people's choices who haven't got the experience level. Do you understand? So you've got the mechanical skill sets, and then you've got the right choices that go with the mechanical skill sets. Whereas a lot of people, there's a lot of people that can cut hair, but they don't know why they're cutting hair and how to cut hair. They're choosing the wrong lengths. They're thinking about the wrong weight distribution. They're not really understanding the positioning of stuff, why to put it there. And when you get people to really analyze it, it's like taking your blinkers off and just really seeing what it is that you're doing.
So this is what people are talking about. This is what you've done. So you've changed some probably strong mindsets, and really swung them around.
We're trying.
Turn them upside down and got them back. But you know, I totally agree with where you're going. I think it's just, you know, it is true. Like, I can recall a time when I was here in London doing a course, and this haircut that I think for some reason it was called a buccaneer or something, where they all had a ponytail down the back, and that was the style of the week. And everybody went out with it, and I was lucky enough to be stuck with someone who was 70 that went out with this ridiculous little bit of 6 hairs hanging down the back of their head, because that's all we were learning that week.
It's crazy.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah. I lived it for a long time.
And you know, like, it was, you'd go home and you think, how can I transfer that? The only thing that I ever went away with was a firefly that I thought was most universal.
Beautiful.
And I still to this day will call on that when I have to do a haircut, which is very rare. I identified with that because I was able to use that a little bit more, you know, commercially than the other options. But, you know, it's such a great, I understand that, you know, sadly enough, a lot of hairdressers out there just pick up a pair of scissors and pray. And, you know, the education is just so important. And I feel we've gone through this whole thing, and you'll probably, I hope you agree with me, but we've gone through a period of hair where it's just been a chip and a chop, and now it's an electric clipper on a
line.
Dry head of hair,
just because it looks cool on social media. And I think people are starting to think, oh, well, I could be a hairdresser, because if all I have to do is just comb the hair and just do that with a pair of electric clippers, you know, that's all it is. And, you know, the toughest thing for you guys and for me as well is to have people realize is there's more to it than what social media is putting out there. And
it's really easy to get lost and disheartened by the volume of misinformation that's out there. And I think there's two ways of looking at it. If I look at it from a business head, great opportunity for me, more people to teach, brilliant, can make loads of money, great.
yes.
But then if I look at it from an industry point of view, if I look at it from a standardization point of view, if I look at it from the reputation of our industry, which has nothing to do with money for me, it's more about the craftsmanship of it. If I look at it that way, there's a lot of miscommunication out there, and my goal and our goal as a company is to try and put out what we hope will influence people in a positive way, because amongst all of that information that's out there, there needs to be some credibility, something which people can. It's so easy to relate to the glamour and the glitz. And what's interesting is when you actually look at the social animal, because I'm really bad at all this social animal stuff, and what I find is interesting is that some of the people that I really respect and think, okay, these guys they're good at what they do, or he's really good, or she's really good at what they do, their following level is nothing like the person who ain't got a Scooby-Doo what they're doing, but they're just so good at playing this kind of animal. And our job is not necessarily to, let me put it really simply. You can learn something from everybody, and I truly believe that.
Yes.
But you've got little Johnny who's working really hard to try and build his own career. He's training himself up as best as he can, and he's saving his money to do a course to really push himself forward. Okay, and this kid's just saving, and because of this social media animal, again, I go back without being negative. You can learn something from everybody, but if you're going to charge for it, you better know what you're doing, because little Johnny's just wasting his money, and that's the problem.
And I totally agree. And sadly enough, some of the people who are doing amazingly on social media, who we all can probably say are not the highest skilled people, are now doing education and grabbing that dollar.
Everybody's it's like, I say this to my team all the time. It's like everybody can be a teacher. You could put a classroom up and you can put students in there, you put mannequins there. Doesn't mean there's any education actually happening.
No.
There's just, you can create the environment, but if the person doesn't have it in their soul to share, you can be a teacher or class as a teacher, or you can be a true educator.
Yes.
And it's very rare to find true educators. I can name them in my hand very quickly. And I think that our job is to try, we're part of a massive machine. And Allilon is just a small part of that. So all we can do is help and be part of the solution.
Yes.
We can't do it by ourselves. We can try, because every time I'm teaching 6 people, say, our philosophy, there's another 50 people in this class with one teacher doing a ratio of 1 to 50, teaching them whatever they're teaching them. And so it's like there's so much moving in the wrong way to pull it all back. So we try and say as a company, Allilon is for everybody, but it's not for everybody.
Really?
Yeah. So it's for everybody. Everyone can have access to it, but actually when they experience it, they then get to choose whether this is the journey they want to go down or not.
Yes, that's true.
Because what we won't do is we won't pull people along. So if you come and do a course of Allilon, or if anybody was to do a course of Allilon, if they're coming because they want us to tell them, how great they are and that's amazing what you've just done, and here's a diploma, thanks for your money, I'll see you later. That is not what Allilon is. You can't just have a course. It's a journey. You have to start with the primary shapes. And that course, you get tested the whole way through.
Right.
And if you don't pass the test, you don't go through to the next stage, because there's no point. You're wasting your money. There's no point me being able to talk to you about hair and you not being able to understand what I'm trying to teach you. So they have homework every day. It's proper education. And what we find is it either changes people's complete 360, the way they look at hair, or they completely reject it.
So you fight a few along the way?
I just see it as, this is who we are, and this is what we're trying to do. We would love to have you on that journey with us. If it's not, there's going to be millions of other journeys there for you.
Yeah.
Because Allilon isn't the beginning and end of everything.
No.
We're just part of it.
Yeah.
But hopefully what we're trying to do is connect with people on a human level and get them to understand that I don't care about being rich. That's not my passion.
No.
Money comes, money goes. What I care about is when I finish, and I'm lucky enough, I'll be lucky maybe another 25 years if I'm lucky, right? I want to be able to finish and say, you know what? These people now who are the leaders of the industry, at some point, I was part of that person's journey. You made a
difference for them.
And if I can do that, if I can focus on creating an amazing team, then for me, I've done my bit for the bigger picture.
Yeah. Because they're your disciples.
Yeah.
That then go out and spread that word as well. So it's a chain effect. I mean, walking through your salon today, and I'm on the 5th floor here. Remarkable salon. It's just buzzy. It's got energy. The staff looking happy and engaged, doing a great job. I mean, obviously the training process just for them alone is phenomenal. You mentioned that they're doing 3 years before they even hit the floor.
Depending on their journey. So for example, if you have a kid who's just come out of college or whatever, or just as an apprentice, their journey usually takes up to 3 years. If you've got somebody who's got some experience levels and they're coming as an apprentice, their journey could take, basically the way we've designed it is that the speed of their journey is based on their personal development.
Yeah.
So there isn't like in 3 years you have to be qualified or in 2 years. It's the period usually takes about 3 years for someone. But if they happen to be excessively good at something, why hold them back? Let them excel, let them breathe, let them move on. So they have a curriculum where they basically have to pass certain assessments, and then they get assessed constantly. They have to do, in fact, what I'll do, before you go, I'll show you one of the kids' folders, for example. It's quite unique. It'd be a good thing for you to see, actually. But the training system has been designed for them to grow at their speed. So that's where we need to get to. We're going to get behind you. We're going to give you all the tools you need, but you're the one that has to do the work.
Yes.
So usually if it's very quick to see if they're not progressing, then we try and address it. And if it's not working, it's not working.
No.
It's time to move on.
Yes.
Because what we never want to do, and what my biggest frustration is dragging people through education. You either want to learn or you don't.
That's right.
And if you want to take up my time, because it's my life, this is my life.
Yeah.
This is 3 hours of my journey that I'll never get back. And I'm going to give you my 3 hours or my 10 hours, whatever it is I'm going to give you. And I want you to I want to go home and I want to be knackered, and my teachers want to come home and we want to be like, I just can't take anymore. But that is what education's about. You should be exhausted.
Yes.
And if the student's not exhausted, you didn't do a job.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it's a challenge, but for me, that's how education should be delivered. You should go home mentally drained, you should go home mentally stimulated, and you should go home thinking to yourself, okay, right, well, what's my goal tomorrow? Because tomorrow's another day, and my goal is to just be better today than I was tomorrow than I was today.
Exactly.
And that's the biggest thing that we try to install in people.
I tell you what I think's been interesting, looking at some of your collections around the room. How often do you do collections?
So it's quite funny you asked, actually. When we first started, I said to Ped, we're only going to do a collection if you've got something to say. We're not going to follow fashion and do like 3 collections every year or 2 collections. Because for me, it's like, the problem with following fashion, and I try to explain this to friends of mine, the problem with following fashion is that you're always following. And why should we be following fashion? Why? Why shouldn't fashion be following us?
That's right.
So what I tend to look at when we're thinking about our collections is, okay, right, well, let me find somebody, because we always have a muse that we base our collections on. And the muse usually has nothing to do with hairdressing.
Okay.
So anybody who's ever followed any of our collections will see the journey. We usually pick a muse, somebody who me or my team find inspiring, and then we tell their story, and we get their journey. We introduce them into our world, and we introduce our world. We try and get our people to look outside of fashion for inspiration.
So an example of a muse that you...
So let me give you an example. So our latest collection is called Fumage, which is what you can see on the walls. And the guy who we based the collection on is from Canada. He's from Quebec, and his name is Stephen Spazuk. And he is a fire painter. He draws with fire and smoke. And but his whole story is based on he's what we call an engaged artist. So he's trying to communicate about sustainability, about war, about the impact we're having on the environment, about how human beings, branding and commercialism and consumerism, how it's affecting our planet. And we've got a platform. And if we can inspire hundreds and thousands of people to understand the bigger picture, not just a haircut or a hair color or a hairdress, whatever it is, if we can introduce them to somebody who basically looks at life slightly differently, and if we can open that door, introduce him to what we do, because a lot of people look at our industry and think, oh, well, if you're thick, you could be a hairdresser. But a lot of the people who we've introduced into our collections go, wow, I didn't realize how complicated this was. I didn't, when they watch us putting the collection together, watch us talking about the colors, their cuts, the this, the that, it blows their mind, and then they then go to their social people, and then they communicate to their people. Oh, look, I didn't realize hairdressing was so detailed. I didn't realize it was so complex. And if we can get other people to respect our industry more, and if we can get our industry to look bigger than just fashion, I mean, for me, everyone's got their eyes open.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do. So we try to tell people stories. And for example, we've had Ace's collection with Angelo Bungalos. We've had Tim Flack with the main collection. We've had Okafor with Kelvin Okafor from the Okafor collection. We've had Emily Tang from the Rivery collection. We've had the Child's Play collection, which is my children's, was the inspiration behind that. We've had Streb collection with Elizabeth Streb. We've had all of our, if you go onto YouTube, you can see all our collections. But you'll hear the story, you'll hear the interview, you'll understand the person. And that's what I love. I love telling people stories. I'll give you an example. Whenever I do interviews, people will go, oh, but where'd you get your inspiration from? That's what they say to me, right? And you probably have the same questions every time. Yeah. And you kind of sit there and you go, oh my God, right, okay, so this is how I try to best make people understand. They'll say something like, where'd you get your inspiration from? And then you'll hear someone go, oh, I was inspired by this beautiful vase or this incredible building. Look at the architecture of this building. And don't get me wrong, I understand that principle. But really, the creativity isn't the end product. It's not the vase or the building. It's the person's mind that thought about creating it in the first place.
Yes.
It's like, why did he choose that material? Why did he or she choose that size, that shape, those dynamics? It's the mind that's the creative bit, not the end product. And it's the same with hair, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could do a cool haircut, but the thought process that goes, or a cool dressing, or cool color, the thought process that goes into it is the value.
Yes.
So if you can get in the person's mind, then this product can be recreated many times if you understand the formula.
Yes.
And that's the goal. So our collections try and get people to understand the mind of the person who's created the end product. So the
haircut doesn't come first?
No way.
You don't even think about the haircut?
No.
You're now exploring this individual.
Yeah.
You're exploring where they are, what they do, drawing them in, looking at that bigger picture, and then from there you can start seeing elements that could be
100%.
Pulled into...
And when you speak to them, you find out what's valuable for them. When you understand what's important to them, then you can base your collection on what's important to them. So for example, if we look at Spazuk and the Fumage collection, there's a couple of pictures that he's done which I think are just incredible. And the most simplest ones that he's done have been a grenade with a bird basically sitting on top of it and just pulling the kind of, the pin out of this grenade with its beak. And the message behind it is obviously how war is affecting nature and so forth. And there's another one with this beautiful gas mask, but the gas mask, the design of it is all kind of branding. I'm not going to name brands, I don't want to be rude to anybody, but lots of like commercial branding all over this gas mask. And the idea is that we're being choked by this consumerism and things like that. So what we tend to do is we pick like what we feel is either pieces that we like, or for example, if it was your piece, we'd say to you, okay, so which are your key pieces that you really want to share with people, that you feel really communicate your message? Then you show us those pieces, and then we either use kind of areas for sectioning pattern, or for toning, or shapes, or usually for example, the bird one. Let's give that as an example. We would create a haircut where the zoning of it was the same shape as the wing of the bird. So you've got all these different feathers that come up like that. So the zoning would put into the head, and the positioning of it would wrap the hair around. So your lengths are increasing and decreasing based on the sectioning pattern and the zone. And just that gives it this kind of this flick that it just comes alive. Yeah. But you're basing it on a bird's wing, but you're trying to be like, I'm very literal, whereas Ped's not. So I will literally look at the picture, and we laugh about it actually, because I'll look at a picture and I'll go, right, okay, I can take that bit there and that bit there, and I can plonk it on the head here and there. And if I put this wideness at this point, it will bend on the head at this point, and I'll think like that. Whereas Ped would be like, well, I love the feeling of this, and he would just kind of go, okay, well, I just want to make it feel like this. So it's, we and our team, like some of my team are very kind of structured in how they put it together, and some of them are about feeling and kind of, I don't know, yeah, for me it's about... I hear you. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I mean, I always love to hear it because, you know, we all work differently. And everyone, the first question someone's always going to ask us, how do you inspire? Where do you get your inspiration? Who do you follow? You know, this sort of thing. So it's interesting that this is what you're doing. What's interesting about what you just said, right, when you talked about following, we talk to our team all the time, and it's like they get influenced again by this social animal. So they'll come up to me and they'll go, Johnny, have you seen this? And I will always say, I don't want to see it. Don't show me. Because my thought process is this: the more time you spend looking at everybody else, the less time you spend looking at your own weaknesses and where you need to improve. And if you just focus on you and your people and your team and the direction you're going to go in, instead of following, you were leading, because other people will be looking at you. So just don't worry about what everyone else does. It's incredible. Brilliant. Let them do what they do. What's our message? What are we trying to say? What do we want to do?
Now, God, we've just had this conversation today already.
Okay, cool.
With Jamie and Sally, and it's exactly how they feel as well. So it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think it's that young generation that are so hooked on social media. But those with the experience like yourself and people that have been in the industry, they're thinking completely differently. And it's true. You can get so caught up with the detail on it, or trying to find out how the hell that hairstyle was created, that, you know, so where are you? You're diluting your ability to even think
100%.
creatively, aren't you?
100%. Don't get me wrong. I don't think you should be ignorant to what's around you.
No,
or arrogant to what's around
you.
But I do believe that the more time you spend looking at other people, the less time you really look at where you're going wrong, what you need to improve on. And if you just focus on making yourself the best version of you and your team the best version of them, hopefully you can I don't know if infect is the wrong word. It's
affect.
Affect. You can affect the way people think about stuff.
So for someone listening to you chatting today, who obviously doesn't work for you because, you know, they don't, and I've got to say those people that are working downstairs are pretty lucky to be working with you guys.
I'm lucky to be working with them.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you appreciate that, but I'm sure it's like-minded if I was to speak to them. You know, but a young hairdresser who really wants to really hone their skills, is it a week course that you're offering, or how do you do this?
So basically, first things first, what I would say to them is go online, look at the Allilon Unplugged. We did this thing called Allilon Unplugged, which I said I'd do it for a year. I did it for a year. I did it every single Tuesday, 7 o'clock, no matter where I was on the planet. We just did it. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was hard, it was challenging. And there was days where you'd come off out of a classroom, you'd be physically and mentally drained, but then you've got to go online and be live and still kind of keep that tempo. And we did that for a year, every single Tuesday.
I commend you.
Yeah, every single Tuesday.
I commend you.
So what I would say to them is, if they want to understand Allilon, watch them first. If they think that they can relate to what we're trying to do, then think about starting your Allilon journey. And the Allilon journey, the curriculum's been designed the same way we train our staff. So you're not allowed to jump courses. You can go back and retake them, but you can't jump them. And the reason for that is what I was saying before about standardization. So it starts with the primary shape, and then it goes to primary mechanics, then primary disconnection. So what is disconnection? Why do we use it? The reasons behind it, thought process. And then advanced disconnection, then it goes into collection and barbering, then teacher training, then shows training, and all these different things.
It's massive.
So diagram training, which for us is a huge thing, which people just don't understand why it's so important, but for me, it's so important. Like, I wish I got that when I was training. Being able to draw a 3-dimensional shape on a 2-dimensional surface, if you can do that, you understand it, you know, and that's a massive, I mean, every course we do, we really try and get people to understand how that works, that process works. So they can't basically just jump on the ship. They have to start with the primary shape.
It's virtually a 12-month course.
Yes, no, so what happens is basically you start the primary shape, it's 4 days, okay? At those 4 days you get assessed throughout. At the end of it you have a review, so we sit down with the student, we talk about what they can improve and whatever, we give them a recommendation. So we don't stop them from moving forward, but we do recommend them either to retake or whatever, depending on their energy levels. We've had students who we've explained to them that maybe Allilon's not for them, and that they're better off reinvesting their money somewhere else. I don't believe that it's fair to an educator or to other students in a class who are investing the same amount of time, not money, time, and their journey, their portion of their life, they're giving it, and you've got somebody who is not that truly passionate about it. There's no point taking your time out and distracting yourself from the people who really do care.
That's right.
So we're not scared to turn around to people and say, look, this, you know, have your money back. This isn't for you, you know. And often what you find is when you do that, we've done it a few times, when you do that, they actually have almost like an intervention in their mind.
Yes, that's right.
And all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, I actually want to do it. I want to concentrate now. I want to be part of that process. And then you can actually convert someone who's maybe just disheartened or a bit lost.
Yes.
Often they're usually the most seasoned stylists.
Yeah.
They find it hard to evolve, or they've got so many maybe struggling habits that they find it hard to be critiqued or be. We teach, if I'm honest, our main core people we teach is teachers and salon owners.
Yes.
And the reason we try to target that is because they can then influence 10 other people.
That's right. And then that trickle effect.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Because
that's what it is.
there's no point me feeding Sam, for example, and then Sam goes back into the same environment where the systems are the same.
Yes.
But the culture is the same.
That's right.
Because then Sam just gets lost again.
That's right.
Or Sam gets actually
Sam just goes back the other way again.
Yeah. Whereas if I can get Sam's boss and I can get into their mind and I can help them understand that they could grow their business. If I talk numbers, they could grow their business based on systems.
Yes.
Or if I could just get them to fall back in love with hair again.
Yes.
Which for me is
because that's half the problem is salon owners are salon owners, and they're always going to be, there's no other option to be a salon owner, but they're actually only doing it because there's no other means to an end.
Yeah.
And they probably are their worst enemies, in a salon.
You probably find it every time when you teach as well.
Oh, I do. But, I'm pretty lucky because there's a massive, my big classes is a big dollar investment. So they are there to get their pound of flesh out of me.
Gotcha.
And and I'll deliver that. I'll do that, and I'll be still the last man standing at the end of the day because I want to prove to them that I've still got what it takes to keep rolling. But I think what you're doing is just so commendable. I can't endorse this system enough. Just seeing what you've got down there is remarkable for such a short time that you've been doing it. To build a salon to this capacity, based on systems. That's the answer,
There's some amazing books that we've read that might help people, your listeners.
And what would they be?
There's a book that me and Pedal read together 7 times. No, I'm lying 5 times. We've read it together. It's called The E-Myth. The reason why most businesses fail.
Yes.
That's a brilliant book.
Yes.
And that basically talks about what you mentioned before, McDonald's and so forth. It's that's an amazing book. There's another book we read called Who Moved the Cheese.
Oh yes,
great book.
I bought that book for all my staff on Christmas.
Great book.
And then we did a whole 6 weeks training on it thereafter, and we worked on that. And the one, what about the fisherman in San Francisco?
I haven't read that one, but maybe I'll look at it.
I have to try and remember. I've lost the name of it, but it's Pike's Fishmongers in San Francisco down at the wharf.
Okay.
And, it goes about saying about the guys, you couldn't get a worse job than being a fishmonger on a wharf in San Francisco in the cold. That's all their job was. But they were the happiest people. And the philosophy based on that was just incredible.
Okay.
I've got it. Probably if you just Google it, I think you'll probably find that.
If you find it, message.
I absolutely will.
What's happened to me?
I will, because I'm a great believer of these sort of books as well, and I think it does help. And as a salon owner, it's so important for you to be, your energy is infectious.
Completely.
You walk in there having a bad day, and then you wonder what's wrong with everybody else, but you didn't look at yourself as you walked in the door.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a lot about that as well. There's a lot to be said about that.
You know what? The past 2 years for me personally have been probably the most difficult 2 years of my life. And there's a lot of lessons that I've learned in these past 2 years. And the biggest lesson I've learned, and maybe I'm being a bit too sensitive now for this kind of scenario, maybe I shouldn't even be talking about these kind of things, but the biggest thing I've learned to do now is actually be grateful for not just what I've got, but the people around me can either be my rock, or they can be the thing that's pulling me down.
Yes.
And what I've learned through this period is that I can't change how other people perceive me, the company, the industry, but I can't change that because it's their mindset.
That's
but
right.
what I can do is just be the best version of me.
That's exactly
and
right.
if I can try and be the best version of me, and my team can be the best version that they can be, and we can try and remember the core principle. If you ask anybody downstairs, anybody, what the kind of core principle of our brands are, it's about the human connection. It's about the thing that's constantly getting lost with all these phones and all this technology. Like looking at someone in the eyes when you talk to them and connect, make them feel what you're saying, make them be, that is being lost. And I look at my sons, and I'm always the bad one, because I'm always taking their phones off them and their technology away from them. But one of the biggest things I've learned is that if you can get people to understand that when you strip everything back, when you take away money, when you take away buildings, when you take, like, I can lose this building tomorrow, and the value is my team and the people, because my people can be anywhere, and they don't need to be in this salon to be successful. They can be on a beach, they can be on a boat, they could be in a plane and be successful because they have the right mindset.
Yes.
And that human connection is just as important as the haircut or the color or the dressing. If you can understand that, if people can understand that, I mean, our industry, first of all, will be much more humane.
Yes.
People will be a lot happier. The money will come. The
money will always follow.
There's no debate about that. But it's another thing that I find, and you probably find this as well, you probably definitely find this. I'm speaking to the team in Montreal. A lot of hairdressers don't truly value their time properly. And when you think about it, right, and again, it might be a bit spiritual, right, it might be a bit too deep for this kind of scenario, but how long have we been together? We've been together, what, an hour, say, yeah? We've been together. I own 1 hour of your life, and you own 1 hour of my life, and we'll never get that back.
No.
It's gone. So you have to say, right, have I just wasted an hour of my life?
I definitely haven't.
Yeah, or have I enjoyed it? Have I been with the right people? Was it a value for my time?
Yeah.
And if you get people to start thinking like that and truly living in the moment, education becomes more fun, nurturing and building people and building brands and building people. All this becomes so much more fun because it's like you're just now. I'm right here, I'm right now. And I'm here with you guys, and I'm loving having a conversation with you guys, and I might have gone a bit deep and a bit spiritual, whatever you want to say, but this is my life.
Well, I've got to say, Johnny, I have valued your time because I know that you're going off tomorrow and you've only probably just come in, and you've obviously been rolling up your sleeves all weekend, renovating with your sons, and I know how important family is to you as it is to me. And you know, that is like, so it's gold for me to have that opportunity to be with you. And I've never met you before.
No. 100%.
And the weird thing is, I'm sitting here and I feel like I've known you forever. I feel so connected to you, and it's just, your pearls of wisdom are just absolutely incredible. And I just feel so thrilled that you've given me your time to share your thoughts, because I believe the people listening to this will be a lot more wiser and very grateful for your time that you've given as well.
I hope that you talked about Allilon's reputation growing. It could grow in a negative way, it could grow in a positive way. I don't know. But every single time we try and connect with people, if anybody who might potentially be listening to us who's started their Allilon journey, I'd love for them to, people say to me, like, what's the difference between you and blah, blah, blah. And I always say, why don't you just ask the students? They'll tell you the answer. There's no point me sitting there saying how amazing we are at this and how great we are. And then that's rubbish.
But you know, I think student journeys are so valuable.
Completely.
And actually, you've just prompted me to think, when we do this post, we will actually ask students,
100%.
Have they had the opportunity to work with you guys, and what their experience is, and how their journey's going? Because I think that's really so. It makes you then realise that you're doing a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I say we say all the time, we don't want to be the biggest education company in the world. We just want to try to be one of the most respected. And if we can earn people's respect, then we can make a difference.
I think it's that ripple effect that you're creating at the moment. And as I said at the very beginning, you're being talked about, and it talked about in such a positive way that you're doing your job well. Hopefully. And that's what it's all about. And it's just throwing that little stone into the ocean, and you see that ripple coming out. You feel like you're that little stone, but I don't think, I'm sure you are probably realising, but I'm seeing as an educator in my travels that's just getting bigger and bigger just from the conversation. That's why I needed to be with you today to hear even more.
I appreciate your time, believe me.
So thank you so much, because I know your time's precious, and I wanted to make the time. And I hope the people listening have really felt
the connection that I have as well, because it's just been a wonderful opportunity to get into the minds of Johnny and hear more about his journey and what he's doing. And please, if you are part of the Alliance and you've been to the classes, it really would be cool for you guys to post some comments about how you all found the journey as well. And I'm going to wrap up today and say thank you to everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this broadcast. What a remarkable man Johnny is. I hope you enjoyed my hairy chat with him. Remember, if you're looking for a great education, check out Allilon Education. They are an incredible brand who are doing some amazing work. Now, my next hairy chat is going to be with Bruno Marc, and we're going to be talking about team and what creates an awesome team. I'm looking forward to sharing that information on Hairy Chat podcast shortly.